So for the past handful of weeks, I've been seeing almost nothing but Sony A7 IV content on my page, and to be honest, it's been making me kind of jealous. Although I don't have one currently physically with me, I did have a couple of my friends who were kind enough to send me a handful of clips from their A7 IVs. So we have a couple clips from 𝗦𝗬𝗙𝗙 and Jhawk. They are phenomenal creators. You should check them out. All their links will be down in the description below. To me, if I can't get my physical hands on the camera, then second best is getting my hands on the footage so I can throw it into DaVinci, play around, push and pull the colors, see how far we can push it until it breaks. And hopefully together we can just learn some things about how good is footage from the A7 IV. All right, so as I just said, we got a handful of clips in here. We got these two from 𝗦𝗬𝗙𝗙, one of his face so we can do skin tones, one of some of these headphones, and then we have looks like 4 clips from Jhawk, couple just at the desk, typical A-roll stuff, and then we also have a overshot B-roll, and then I grabbed just one of my B-roll clips for comparison from my latest video, which you guys can check out. And right before we start pushing and pulling, let's just look at the data a little bit here. It looks like both of Patrick's are shot in H.265 main 422 10-bit, and he did tell me that this was 𝗬𝗙𝗙3 𝗬𝗙𝗙𝗙3 daylight white balance. The only thing I don't know is what ISO these were shot in. I'm guessing they're the native ones. Jhawk's is slightly different. His is still 𝗬𝗙𝗙3, I believe, but his is H.264 422 set to high. Again, I'm guessing that's just a compression choice, but that is a 10-bit image as well. And then for those who don't know, Blackmagic B-Raw, it shows 16-bit for the bit depth, but it's actually 12. It's kind of confusing. It's like 12-bit containers, 16-bit linear. I don't fully understand it, but I'm gonna say it's 12-bit. And honestly, the easiest, best representation of bit depth and color is this graph here. So we can see at 24 and 16 and 12. 12, you can kind of start to see the difference. You can start to see the individual colors kind of coming out here. And then if we go down to 10-bit, there's a significant difference here, and then even more blocky when it comes down to 8-bit. Now here's something that is important to note that I'm sure Patrick will appreciate, because he's always talking about, you know, what is a spec on paper versus actual usefulness in the actual daily use of the camera. We can see here that there is a significant difference between 12 and 10-bit, but if we were to just look at the raw, totally untouched, his shot here and my shot here, obviously they're completely different sets, see different white balance and stuff like that, but right off the bat you don't notice any big differences. To be honest, his is actually cleaner. Mine has more noise, and specifically patterned noise in the background, because it is relatively dark, and as everyone knows, Sony's are just like bosses in low light, pretty much the best. There's just no denying that. This is a very clean image. So another part of this article, and I'll leave this article link down below, is this whole talk about posterization, which is kind of important. What I kind of take away from it is basically, if you're just filming something and you have everything, all your settings set correctly, and you light the scene a certain way, the way you want it, and it looks good in camera, then you can get away with pretty low bitrate stuff. I mean, this overhead camera, the Canon R5 that I just picked up, that's shooting in 8-bit, which is significantly less colors than my Blackmagic 12-bit. But if I shot a scene where they were both side by side and both exposed and, you know, colored decently all in camera, then you wouldn't be able to really notice the difference. It's only when you get into post-processing and really start pushing the colors that you're going to start notice some differences. So let's go in here and go ahead and just start adding a handful of nodes. And he told me it was 𝗬𝗙𝗙3, so I'm going to use this guy right here. This let the 𝗬𝗙𝗙𝗙3 Cine to LC709. This one seemed to be the most natural to immediately convert. And we can see again right off the bat, this is a really pleasing image. And so I'm just gonna add a couple of versions, and we're just kind of push and pull this a little bit. So the natural version of this scene is relatively warm. So first look I want to create is kind of emulate a day for night-esque sort of scene, kind of create much cooler tones. Again, that's not what Patrick shot this intending for, so it's not necessarily lit properly. I just want to add a lot more blues and kind of see if I can still retain the skin tones and that kind of warmer light in the background. I'm going to add in some contrast, some mid-tone detail. I'm going to just take the temperature and go pretty far blue. Then what I want to do is add a power grid here. I want to invert that, add an outside, bring him back a bit. All right, and so here we have kind of cooler tone, and I'm gonna again try to push it even further at a lot I've been doing to basically all my videos, but I am gonna bring it down quite a bit. And if we go back to primaries, just gonna touch down highlights. All right, so this is pretty dramatic. If I turn everything off, that's what we started with, and this is where we are at. So the biggest thing that I'm noticing throughout here is that the image is holding together beautifully, and again, it is ridiculously clean in terms of noise. Now, if I were to grab a still of this and apply it to my Blackmagic RAW, one of the biggest differences between codecs that are coming on mirrorless cameras now is I wouldn't actually touch this temp control. I would actually keep that the same, and I'd actually go into my RAW control where I can actually adjust my color temperature directly in here and set it to a much colder tone. There's just a huge difference between doing tint and changing the actual white balance. If I go in, this is just a simple Rec. 709 conversion. If I go in and do the same thing I did to Patrick's, where I just tint it -4000, we can see that it definitely has a bluish tint to it, but it's kind of retaining a lot of the colors from the lips and stuff, and maybe that's the style you're going for, but that is a very different effect than if I go to color temperature and go all the way this way. You can see that it's dramatically changing the entire image, because it's not just tinting the data that's already there, it's actually changing the white balance data that you shot. And so when I go throughout this whole spectrum of going, crazy warm to crazy cool, you can see that it's affecting the image in a much more pleasing way, rather than adjusting the tint slider, which is just going to kind of, it's almost like adding a blue overlay to your existing color data. It just doesn't feel the same. That's my one critique so far. Now I can add another version in here, throwing the Sony LUT back on there. I'm going to tint the room significantly more, but then I'm going to add a parallel, and we're going to qualify his skin. I feel like this looks like a movie poster for Patrick being a villain or something. And so all I'm going to do here, skin tones a bit. Now for the sake of testing, if I go insanely ridiculous, this is actually really impressive. Again, this looks insane, but this is honestly pretty shocking to me. I really thought the image would break significantly more than this. I mean, he can absolutely be added to the Avengers list now if you wanted to. Reset those levels to be less ridiculous. Just kind of bring them back to reality a bit. All right, I like that a lot better. So it just kind of, to me at least, helps separate the background a bit. So that was before, a little too warm. This kind of brings the skin tones back to more natural, but the background is still super warm. And if we add a node circle again, invert it, bring down the levels. And for this one, we're actually going to add a outside node. All right, so we created a handful of fun little looks there. This is just raw without anything. This is just with the S-Log conversion LUT and a quick correction. And then we push it super hard to the cool side, kind of darkened it, made this kind of evening fake night shot, so to speak. And then we pushed it the opposite direction, made it warm, almost like a her type vibe a little bit, boosted up the saturation a decent amount, and all the colors still stay I mean, you could create some really, really stylized looks. Now, just for fun, I'm gonna grab another still of that. I'm going to apply said still to his secondary clip, and it applies beautifully. And now you have a look that is really seamless, and this could absolutely be a video, maybe not his style, but I think it looks pretty good for the over stylized thing we were going for. All right, so moving on to Jhawk, I'm going to use this clip here and this clip here to kind of do the same thing. Now his studio is very like well evenly lit, and so I think we're going to go for more of a commercial style look rather than the kind of more cinematic vibe we went on Patrick's shot. And so first thing, I'm going to apply the same Sony LUT, since this is also S-Log3. Got a really clean image from the start, and now we're just going to add in healthy amount of contrast. And since it's more commercial, we're going to keep things pretty stretched. Add a healthy amount of saturation. Going to go up to like about there, around 62. So we can see with it turned off, this is just the LUT conversion. Add in some basic moves here. I really want to make him pop, so we're going to add another mask node here. Bring down the y-axis in the middle and add a outside node and do our slight S curve. Adds a little bit of pop in the middle there. And again, just like Patrick's images, when it comes to noise, it just looks so clean. If I just start bouncing around to parts of the image, like it just looks like pure black. I mean, don't get me wrong, there is technically some noise in there. If we again go into my Blackmagic, which I always consider to be relatively clean in terms of images, we can see if I turn this off and we look at the raw image, I'll go to the same 200% we were just at on Jhawk's. I mean, and I go to this black, you can absolutely see noise here. And as soon as I turn on the conversion, still very much there. And we even have now introduced some, you know, not terrible, but not super great color noise. It's just so much cleaner. So I'm just gonna remove some of the greens from the lift. That looks better. All right, so that's kind of nice commercial vibe to it, but again, let's see if we can push it with another LUT. Again, this Tempeh Faction, whatever it's called, M-Cine LUT pack, I really like. Ooh, like this. I like this a lot. Add another serial, push it back, pivot my contrast a bit. All right, in terms of the commercial look, so this was the raw clip that we started at, and then we just did a simple conversion, and within a handful of other nodes, we're able to punch it up to this, which I think looks super good. If I hit grab still, go to that second clip, apply it. It looks great here too. It's got a tad of blue in those shadows areas. There we go. Literally just a touch I removed. But yeah, damn, that looks good too. All right, now obviously these are just a couple clips. I would love to see clips that showcase dynamic range better. So something where we see an interior, maybe with a person or a subject, and then a window, or, you know, something that really pushes the dynamic range a bit more. But based on just the couple of clips that I played around with, what I am getting from this A7IV is ridiculously clean, low noise profiles. It looks incredible in bright, contrasty light or dark, moody scenes like Patrick's here, and you can just push it so far. To be honest, if I'm being 100% transparent, I know Patrick and I have debated this on Twitter a handful of times. You know, I've held on to my spec sheet of, you know, 12-bit B-raw compared to 10-bit, really any H.264, H.265 footage from these mirrorless cameras. And while, yes, technically, you know, 12-bit has more colors to work with than this, in terms of realistic world pushing, I mean, I pushed these images farther than I would normally push an image, because normally you are lighting the scene to fit that. You know, if I want to do this crazy night scene or something, then I would be lighting the scene as such, so I wouldn't have to push it as far in post. But even when I'm pushing it in post, it still didn't break. The one drawback that I dislike is the fact that it's not a true raw codec, so you can't change ISO and white balance after the fact. But in return, you get these really small camera packages, batteries that you can like shoot all day in, not to mention autofocus. On the Sony, shoot straight up at night with its like 200,000 ISO sensitivity or something, and you're still getting 4K 10-bit. So yeah, in my limited use case, I totally understand the hype around this camera. I really thought the image was going to start to break, especially on an image like this in these shadowy areas. I was really expecting to see kind of that red of the cheeks just start to become really blocky and break apart, but they are looking pretty darn solid to me. The highlight on the nose ridge line I thought would break a lot faster, and this image is just holding together like a beast. So again, huge shout out to Patrick and Johnny for allowing me to use these clips and videos. Check out their stuff in the links in the description. If you enjoyed this video, want to see more, definitely let me know down in the comments what other cameras and footage I should check out. Shout out to Blackmagic for letting me use this mini color grading panel. I have to send it back today or tomorrow, so this will be the last video you see this in. It's been a joy to use, and yeah, thanks everyone for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.